If you like a talking chess, there's no doubt that one of your favorite gambits or openings has to be the Scotch Gambit. It's one of the channel's favorites that we've seen several times, and of course, one of my personal favorites. It's probably the gambit I use the most in my games with the white pieces. So in this video, I'm going to show you a variety of different tactical ways to end up successfully winning your entire game by delivering a checkmate with the specific gambit that we are looking at right here. And if you keep it in mind, you can win a lot of games, whether they're fast or even slow ones, because it's a spectacular gambit. Pay attention, because getting to this point is very simple. We play e4, the king's pawn, e5, knight to f3, attacking the e5 pawn, knight to c6, defending it. This happens in the vast majority of your games, right? And here, instead of playing the Italian or the Spanish, we go straight for d4, the only correct move against the Scotch Gambit. We've studied this many times on the channel. It's pawn takes pawn, because if not, they won't let us advance, capture, or all sorts of other things. And here, instead of recapturing, which would be the normal standard Scotch opening, we're going to play the Scotch Gambit with bishop to c4. And here we have finally reached exactly the ideal position we want, which is the typical starting position of the Scotch Gambit. In fact, I actually played a competitive tournament game just this past weekend using this very specific line, and I actually won by checkmate. So what do you think if we start with this tournament game? Let's see if you can also pull off that trick. Let's go for it. My opponent played knight to f6, one of the possible moves, right? Against the Scotch Gambit. We've seen it on the channel. I've explained to you that there are two main lines here. Both involve playing e5, attacking this knight on f6, taking advantage of the fact that we've lured away the d-pawn. You already know that this gambit gives up a pawn, but gives us a lot more initiative with our pieces. And the other option, which is the one I used in the game, was castling. I really like both, but I have a special fondness for this one because it has some super interesting lines. I noticed that my opponent was actually quite a bit older than me, and whenever I see that, I try to look for much more complex tactical lines, because usually, well, I'm just saying this based entirely on my own personal experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way for everyone, okay? It is just something I have observed over time. But in my experience, I see that they usually don't study as many lines. So if you're older, take advantage and play these lines too, because that way you'll surprise the younger players. All right, so what are we doing here, chess teachers? We're giving away a pawn, right? Knight takes pawn. I know why. How should I continue? Well, a lot of you are probably thinking, I put the rook on e1, I pin the knight. It won't be able to move, but now, here, if you're loyal followers of the channel, you've probably seen this move here before because it's spectacular. The move is knight to c3. What are we doing here, Chesty? We give away two pawns, and now we're giving away a knight? Careful, I played this line in a slow game, an hour and a half for each player. Now they have two options. Capture with the pawn, right? That's the most logical since I'm giving away the knight. Or if they start to send something, and they see that capturing with the pawn must be a little trap they can capture with the knight. Now let's see what happens if they capture with the pawn. But my opponent captured with the knight, something you'll see very often when you give away a piece or something like that. If you give away a piece, sometimes they might think it's a little trick, like they did in this case. The idea is that we're simply going to recapture the knight with the pawn, so we're no longer down a piece. And now they have a lot of options. For example, if here they decide to if we can correctly capture this pawn, we'll secure a victory in this game immediately, because rook to e1 would follow, delivering a decisive check. They would probably block with the bishop, and then we could continue, for example, with knight to g5, attacking the spot. The knight couldn't come to defend because it doesn't exist, and this game would be completely won for us, very, very easily. The idea is that my opponent, very wisely, played the correct move here. d5, careful, he was well prepared, but I still ended up checkmating him anyway, so stay tuned. The bishop is attacking me. I'm gonna have to reposition it, that's obvious. Before I even think about repositioning my piece to a better square, I really want to take full advantage of the fact that I have this specific move available to me, which essentially functions as a completely free check, right? It is important to realize that you simply won't know how to continue the game effectively if you have only memorized lines without understanding the underlying principles. Let's go ahead and see what happens next. My opponent decided to castle to secure their king, and in response to that, I simply recaptured the central pawn using my knight to maintain my development and pressure. Now you'll see why. I'm bringing another piece into play. And also, the most important reason why I captured with the knight is because that way I opened the diagonal so my queen could join the attack, you see? Together with the bishops, going after the enemy king. As you can see, this position looks really good for the engines. Sorry, for us, for white. If you ask the engines, they'll tell you it's a very balanced position where black also has their chances. However, what's the problem here? That engines can defend against absolutely everything. And for a human, it's very hard to defend against everything with the black pieces here. Centralized knight, both bishops coming in, the queen as well, and the knight can jump in at any moment. Let's see how this ends. My opponent plays bishop to f6, trying to come back and defend, because look at this. This bishop can't get out anywhere, right? We would capture it. They can hardly do anything. Capturing here would fix our pawn structure. So my opponent, wisely, plays bishop to f6, trying to hold his position together. What's the problem with bishop to f6? Actually, none, but look at how we keep putting on the pressure. Bishop to a3. The good thing about having isolated pawns, which is usually a bad thing in an endgame, is that as long as there are still pieces on the board, look at how the pieces can come out wherever they want. Now this bishop, which nobody expected, comes out via a 3, attacking the rook. A rook that has to move out of the way, and now, without a second's hesitation, I bring the queen to h5. It's pretty clear that we're the ones attacking here, right? My opponent has to be on the defensive. In this case, for example, he played g6, the only move to prevent checkmate on h7. The idea is that here I made an incredible queen sacrifice. Pay attention, the queen sacrifice was this: queen takes d5. Giving up the queen completely, and when they captured it, it simply continued with rook takes rook, check. The king has only one move. My bishop came in through f8, and now bishop to h6 ended up being checkmate. Pay attention to this. You already know how we got here, right? Now they have two options, capture with the pawn or capture with the knight. Let's keep watching for a moment to see what happens if they capture with the knight, because there's something super interesting I need to tell you. When we recapture, which we should do, if they capture with the knight, we simply recapture and we're no longer down a piece. Do you remember I told you it was a complete mistake to capture here now? Because then we would be completely winning with rook to e1, knight to g5. Alright, that's not something you can do. Always keep that in mind. It's much better, for example, to play d5, cutting off the bishop's diagonal. Much better. In my game, I played rook to e1, remember? So here, I found a game where bishop to d3 was played directly, and it also had excellent results. What changed? Now, the player with the black pieces did capture this pawn here. Of course, starting to make pointless moves can also be punished in a very simple way. Let me explain it to you. We play with initiative, rook to e1, they have to block the check, for example with bishop to e7. And now, since the bishop is pinned, we can take advantage and make this knight jump. You remember what I always tell you, right? If you remember the plans, you'll be able to make your own plans during the game. In this case, I had already mentioned these knight jumps targeting the f7 square. Important, now we're not targeting the f7 square, but rather the h7 square, with both the bishop and the knight. It seems very hard to defend. g6 is a terrible move because it weakens all the dark squares, and this bishop would get in without any problem. h6 seems much more logical, kicking our knight out. Alright, whether they play h6 or not, pay attention to what we're gonna do. Knight takes on f7. An absolute bombshell. We sacrifice the knight, which they have to accept no matter what, because we're attacking both the queen and the rook. If they don't want to lose material, they have to take the knight. So here we can simply bring the queen in via f3. Pay attention, f3, not h5, f3. And now the black player is in a dilemma. They have two options. Either move the king back to g8 or e8, which would be followed by the bishop coming in, then the queen enters, and this would definitely end in checkmate. Or cover with the bishop on f6. That definitely seems like the better option. Now the king can find shelter. The bishop helps block all the threats, but here we're not going to let them get away. Now, yes, we come in along the h5 diagonal, q h5 check. Would it be possible to simply block with the pawn? No, because it's covered by the bishop and the queen, so the king has to move. Where should the king go? For example, if he goes to g8, they're lost. Rook takes e8 check, and when they capture with the queen, queen takes e8 checkmate. Remember, the h7 square is covered by the bishop. So here, after this check, they can't go to g8. They have to go to f8, covering the e8 square. You get it, right? You can watch the video as many times as you need. Make sure to save it. Perfect! So when the king goes to f8, how do we continue? Well, we can keep up the pressure. Bishop to g6. Once more in this position, we reinforce the devastating tactical threat of moving the rook to e8, which would result in capturing the opponent's queen and effectively ending the game right then and there. By delivering a somewhat questionable check, we can effectively capitalize on the isolated pawns and the structural weaknesses to place this bishop on a3 and pin this knight. So at this point, they really can't do anything at all. For example, if they play bishop 6, which is what happened in the game, to play c5 and cut off the bishop, the game simply ends like this. Rook takes knight, removing the defender. You can't take with the queen because of the bishop. Bishop takes rook. And now, since the bishop has moved away from the king, queen to f3 check. King to g8, queen to f7 check. Pay close attention to this because it's very important. I've mentioned it to you, but I need to show you. When they capture with the knight, now we move on to the pawn, which is the best part of all. When they capture with the knight and we capture here, I've explained to you that taking this pawn was an absolute disaster. But I need to clarify exactly why so you can see it for yourselves and apply it in your own games, because if not, you won't know how to react. Very simple. Rook to 1 gives check, so they have to block, right? Easy. And now we jump with the knight. Up to here is what I had explained to you before, without moving the pieces. But you need to pay attention to an important detail, because otherwise you won't know how to continue. We're threatening the f7 square, right? So normally they castle, and then we bring the queen to h5, threatening checkmate on h7 with the queen and knight. But we're also attacking this square with the queen, knight, and bishop. You see that this is practically unstoppable. In theory, there's only one way to stop it, and that's by removing one of the attackers. Bishop takes knight. Here, your opponent will think they've solved everything, but the real detail I wanted to show you in this line is that after bishop takes bishop, my friends, we've trapped their queen. Do you see it? This queen can't go anywhere, so we're going it. They might want to play f6, but of course that's not possible. The p-pawn is pinned by our bishop on c4. So here they might as well resign or play on a queen down. Alright, here comes the best moment of the video. What happens if when you sacrifice the knight, they actually take it? Which would be the most normal thing in the world, right, Chesterton? Careful, you'll see that they'll play both moves against you, with the knight and with the pawn. But what happens if they take with the pawn? Well, here comes my favorite part of the video. We enter a forced line, where we're gonna put so much pressure on the player with the black pieces that they'll end up wishing they hadn't taken the knight. Pay attention, first bombshell, bishop takes on f7, drawing the king toward the center of the board. It's mandatory to capture, because if, for example, they try to move the king toward the center, we would simply play bishop to d5. We have an extra pawn, we're attacking this knight, rook to e1, the king is stuck in the center. Really bad. Obviously, this would be a huge advantage for us. So what happens if they take the bishop? And I can assure you that in every game where I've done this, they've always taken the bishop, obviously. So the move we need to play next is queen to d5, attacking the king, and pay attention to this. If we want, we can already recover this knight. Do you see it? But okay, where does this king go? This king has several options. For example, e7 is a terrible move. You can see it right away, for the same reason as before, plus we capture with check. Stockfield recommends f6, but it looks really weird, doesn't it? This one here also seems super strange, because you're basically putting the king right in the lion's mouth. And the move they've always played against me is going back to its original square. Trying to get us to make a mistake now and capture this knight here. That would be a mistake, okay? Because then we would give our opponent the chance to play well and defend. Our correct move is the following. Rook to e1. This line is a bit more forced, and it's worth memorizing a little, but above all, understand what I'm saying. Rook to 1, a very good move. We're threatening to take the knight with check, and bringing the rook in is very dangerous, so they have to cover the check at least with bishop to e7. We capture anyway, even though we don't give check, and now we see that block wanted to castle, but can't, because the queen is blocking away. For example, here I found a game where they play rook to f8, which makes perfect sense to come and defend and to occupy the semi-open file. So we simply go bishop to g5. No matter what they do, we'll go bishop to g5, unless they waste a move with h6, which has never happened to me. But anyway, if they did waste a move with h6, we could just play bishop takes h6, which would be a spectacular bombshell. Let me explain. Come on, I'll explain it to you. In case someone does it to you, the only way to prevent g5 is h6, and then we could play bishop takes h6 since it's a spectacular bombshell. If they capture with the rook, the queen comes in to deliver mate on h8. And if they capture with the pawn, then the queen would come in through h5. The king would have to go to f8, and then we could simply continue with queen to d6. And this would be a complete and easy victory for the white pieces. They wouldn't be able to do absolutely anything. Between the rook and the queen, we would deliver checkmate. You can check it for yourselves. I'm not going to drag this out with such an obvious line. All right, rook to f8, and in this case, bishop to g5. Since they're not stopping us, no one ever has, but anyway, we play bishop to g5, and now they have to defend this bishop. For example, rook to f7. Then we trade bishops, and be careful because this is already a trap. If they capture with the rook, queen to g8 is mate. Do you see it? So they have to capture with the mate. And when they take with the knight, even though it looks like they're attacking our queen, they're not because the knight is pinned by the rook. So how do we continue then? Well, we simply continue by bringing our knight in through g5. See how if you remember these ideas, this will definitely come to mind at some point. We attack the rook, and now, which piece do we still need to bring in? The rook on a1, which we also bring to e1, doubling the rooks on the e-file. And this is looking way too good for us, right? Here, no matter what they do, we're going to end up winning the game. For example, the only counterplay they have is to capture this pawn on b2 to try to promote. And then the move I like the most here is queen to e5, though knight takes h7 would also work. And no matter if they promote, imagine they promote to a queen here, which I don't have handy right now, we could finish with queen takes knight, queen takes queen. Do you see it? And simply rook takes with check, the king has to move, and here there's a forced mate in 2. Knight to f7 check, the king can't move, we force the rook to capture the knight, and now rook to e8 is checkmate. And the queen that's here hasn't even posed any real threat, and we don't even need to capture her because we deliver a forced checkmate. What did you think of this lesson? Well, interesting, right? You should review it several times because it has a lot of interesting lines. But I assure you that if you master this gambit, you'll be able to win many games, especially if you have less than 2,000 elo with the white pieces. I have to thank you because you made the most spectacular launch in the world with winning models. If someone doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's very simple. Grandmaster Mauricio Flores, one of the grandmasters who best understands positional chess in the world, one of the fathers of modern chess, I managed to talk to him so he could create a course especially for you. He chose a pawn structure, which is one of the most famous in the world, and turned it into a winning model. So that you can always win with the white pieces and with the black pieces, he has already done the following. He starts by teaching you how to deliver checkmate, and then goes back a bit to see how we can get there. So I assure you that all of you who are in will love it, and you're already fascinated by it. Thank you very much. If you don't know anything at all, I'll explain it to you. There are more than 20 video lessons, okay? From a Grandmaster. Do you know what that is? Do you know what it means to have more than 20 Grandmaster video lessons? It doesn't make any sense at all. And on top of that, he has created practical exercises so you can practice in his app at no extra cost as a bonus, so you can practice. Whether you've understood it or not, I guess I'm showing you some image here on the screen because it just doesn't make any sense. You should definitely take full advantage right now of the reduced entry price, because this complete course is significantly more affordable than the cost of a single individual class. To be honest, it doesn't really make any logical sense, but obviously I feel deeply indebted to all of you, and I've talked extensively to Mauricio so that this class is heavily discounted. So take advantage of it now, because Mauricio will probably revert the enrollment fee back to its original price later on. I hope you loved this video. You already know that if you want to join Winning Models, you have to link right below in the video description. And as always, I'll see you tomorrow in the next video if you like this one, friends. Goodbye!